He finally woke up in Georgia, yawned, and stretched his big body as best he could in the cramped space. "Where are we?" "Livonia." "Oh, that's good news. Where's Livonia?" "Near Sandy Cross. We're in Georgia. Still hot on their trail. You think this is another hit coming up?" "We'll see." At Doraville, we stopped at a diner and had breakfast. The state-of-the-art device attached to the Suburban was still tracking. It seemed unlikely that they'd find it at this point. The breakfast, cheese omelets, country ham, and grits, was a little disappointing. The diner looked just about perfect, and it sure smelled good when we walked inside, but the generous portions were bland, except for the country ham, which was too salty for me. "You gonna follow up with Burns? Maybe become an FBI man?" Sampson asked, after he'd downed his second coffee. I could tell he was finally waking up. "I don't know for sure. Check with me in a week or so. I'm a little burned out right now. Like this food." Sampson nodded. "It'll do. I'm sorry I got you involved in all this, Alex. I don't even know if we can bring them down. They're cocky, but they're careful when they need to be." I agreed. I think they did the hits solely for money. But that doesn't explain enough. What happened to start the killing? Who's behind it? Who's paying the bills? Sampson's eyes narrowed. "The three of them got a taste for killing in the war. Happens sometimes. I've seen it." I put my knife and fork down and pushed the plate away. No way could I finish off the omelet and ham. I'd barely touched the grits, which needed something. Maybe cheddar cheese, onions, sautéed mushrooms? "I owe you. This is big debt, Alex," Sampson said. I shook my head. "You don't owe me a thing, but I'll probably collect on it anyway." We went back out to the car and followed the signal for another 2 hours. The trip had taken from morning into the early afternoon. We were on I-75, which we took to US 41, and then Old 41. Then we were on some narrow, meandering country road in Kennesaw Mountain National Park. We were following 3 killers in northern Georgia, about an 8-hour drive from Rocky Mount, close to 500 miles. I passed the turnoff the first time and had to go back. A turkey vulture was sitting there watching us. The woods around here were heavily forested, and the foliage was thick and ornery-looking. The RDF indicated that the Suburban was no longer moving. "We ought to park somewhere along the main road, hide the car as best we can, then walk on in through the woods," I said. "Sounds like a plan. I hate the fucking woods, though." I found a little turnoff that would keep the car hidden. We opened the trunk and took out a duffel bag, as well as guns, ammo, and night vision goggles for each of us. NVGs. Then we walked about half a mile through the thick woods before we could see a small cabin. Smoke was curling out of a fieldstone chimney. A very cozy spot. For what, though? A meeting of some kind? Who was here? The cabin was near a small lake that was fed by the headwaters of the Jacks River. At least that was how it was marked. A stand of hemlocks, maples, and beech trees enveloped the clearing in deep green. Some of the trees were easily 6 feet wide. The blue Suburban was parked in front of the cabin, but so was a silver Mercedes station wagon. It had North Carolina plates. "They've got company. Who the hell is this?" Sampson asked. "Maybe we caught a break." We saw the front door open, and Colonel Thomas Starkey stepped outside. He had on a green T-shirt and baggy fatigue pants. Right behind him was Mark Sherman, Cumberland County's district attorney. Christ! It was the lawyer who had prosecuted and convicted Ellis Cooper for 3 murders that he didn't commit. Chapter 92. "What the hell is this? You know who he is?" Sampson asked. His temperature was rising fast. "I remember him. Like you said, maybe we caught a little break. But why would Mark Sherman be here?" Sampson and I were crouched behind a couple of ancient beech trees about 100 yards from the cabin. The forest was eerily dark and seemed almost primitive. The roots of the huge trees all around us were carpeted by small ferns. On the walk there, our legs got a good lashing from the catbrier and the blackberry stickers. We were in deep shit somewhere around Kennesaw, Georgia. We traveled a lot of hours to get here. Now what? John asked. Now we wait. We listen, I said. I reached into the cloth duffel bag and pulled out a black box attached to what looked like a silver wand. The apparatus was a long-distance microphone, compliments of my new good buddies at the Bureau. Sampson nodded when he saw what it was. FBI wants you real bad. I nodded back. That they do. This is a state-of-the-art unit. But we should get a little closer. We made our way up toward the cabin, crawling on our hands and knees between the towering trees. Besides the long-distance mic, Sampson and I had rifles and 9mm Glocks. Take one of these, I said, in case you don't like the NVGs. I handed him a pocket scope that worked in day or night. Fully extended, it was less than 6 inches long. Another valuable loan from the FBI. Only fair, I guess, Sampson said. The boys probably have a couple of war toys of their own inside that log cabin. That's what I was thinking. It's the argument I used with Burns. That and the fact that they came after me at my house. Burns has 3 kids of his own. He was sympathetic. Sampson glanced over at me. I thought you didn't know it was them in Washington, he whispered. I don't. I'm not so sure it was. I had to tell Burns something. I don't know that it wasn't them. Sampson grinned and shook his head. You're going to get fired before you get hired. I stayed close to the ground and trained one end of the mic at the cabin. We were only 50 yards away now. I worked the microphone around until the voices got as clear as if they were just a few feet away from us. I recognized Starkey's voice.
Thought we'd party a little tonight, Counselor. Tomorrow we're going to hunt deer up on the mountain. You in? I have to get back tonight,
said Mark Sherman.
No hunting for me, I'm afraid.
There was a brief silence, then a burst of laughter. 3 or 4 men joined in. Brownlee Harris spoke up.
That's just fine, Sherman. Take your blood money and run, why don't you? You hear this one? The devil takes a meeting with this lawyer. I heard it,
said Sherman.
Funny, Mark. Now listen, devil is slick as shit, you know. I mean, you know, right, Counselor? Devil says, I'll make you a senior partner right now, today. Young Turk lawyer asks, what do I have to do? Devil says, I want your immortal soul. Beat. And also the immortal souls of everyone in your family. The young lawyer stops and thinks, and he eyes the devil something fierce. And then the lawyer says, what's the catch?
There was raucous laughter from inside the cabin. Even Sherman joined in.
That's even funny the 4th time. You do have the rest of my money?
He asked once the laughter had stopped.
Of course we do. We've been paid and you're going to be paid in full. We keep our deals, Mr. Sherman. You can trust us. We're men of honor.
Suddenly, I heard a loud noise off to the left of where we were crouched. Sampson and I swiveled around in a hurry. What the hell was this? A red sports car was coming fast up the dirt road. Too fast. Now, who the hell is this? Sampson asked in a whisper. More killers? Maybe the shooters from Washington? Whoever it is, they're moving. We watched as the red car bounced up the badly rutted dirt road. It pulled in behind the Suburban, screeching to a stop. The front door of the cabin opened. Starkey, then Harris, stepped outside onto the porch. The doors of the sports car were flung open simultaneously, almost as if the action were choreographed. 2 dark-haired women stepped out. Asian and very pretty. They were wearing skimpy tops and short skirts. Both had on outrageous shoes with high heels. The driver held up a bottle in silver wrapping paper, smiled, and waved it at Starkey.
Chào mừng, ta tên với tòa Good chung toi,
Starkey called from the front porch. Vietnamese, Sampson said. Starkey said something like, Welcome to our hooch. Chapter 93. We had been observing the rustic cabin for more than 2 hours, and now we watched the sun dip behind the mountains. It had gotten much colder, and my body was feeling stiff, and I was tired from the drive. The wind whistled through the forest, whistled and sometimes roared. It felt as if it were blowing right through me. We're going to get them, Sampson whispered hoarsely. I think he was trying to cheer me up. Maybe tonight, maybe not. They're making mistakes, Alex. I agreed with that. Yes, they are. They're not invincible. I'm not even sure they have the whole story themselves. They're just a piece of this. We could hear them inside the cabin. Every word. Mark Sherman had apparently decided to stay for the party. Rock music echoed from the cabin. Janis Joplin was wailing, and one of the Asian women sang along. It sounded like bad karaoke, but nobody complained. Then the Doors came on. Memories of Vietnam, I suppose. Occasionally someone would pass by a window. The Asian women had both taken off their tops. The taller of the two stepped outside for a few minutes. She smoked a joint, taking greedy puffs. Harris came out and joined her. They spoke English on the porch of the cabin.
I used to know your mama, son,
he said, and giggled. You're kidding. The girl laughed and blew out jets of smoke. Of course you're joking. I get it, sort of. She looked to be in her late teens, maybe early 20s. Her breasts were large and too round, augmented. She wobbled slightly on her high heels.
No, I knew her. She was my hooch mama. I made it with her, and now I'm going to make it with you. See the irony?
The girl laughed again. I see that you're stoned.
Well, there's that, too, my smart little dink. The thing is, maybe you're my daughter.
I tuned out on the conversation and stared at the outline of the A-frame cabin. It looked like some family's vacation house. We'd heard that the three of them had been using the place since the mid-'80s. They'd already talked about murders committed in these woods, but it wasn't clear who had been killed or why, or where the bodies were buried. Jim Morrison was singing The End. The TV was on, a University of Georgia football game, Georgia versus Auburn. Warren Griffin was rooting loudly and obnoxiously for Auburn. Mark Sherman had apparently gone to Georgia, and Griffin was busting his chops. Sampson and I stayed in a culvert a safe distance away. It was getting even colder, the wind screaming through the large hemlocks and beech trees. Starkey doesn't seem to be partying, Sampson finally said. You notice that? What's he doing? Starkey likes to watch. He's the cautious one, the leader. I'm going to move a little closer. We haven't seen or heard from the other girl in a while. Makes me nervous. Just then, we heard Mark Sherman raise his voice.
Jesus, don't cut her. Be careful. Come on, man. Put away the K-bar. Why the hell not cut her?
Harris yelled at the top of his voice.
What the hell is she to you? You cut her then. Try it. You'll like it. You cut her, counselor. Get your hands dirty for a change. I'm warning you, Harris. Put the goddamn knife down. You're warning me? That's pretty rich. Here, take the knife. Take it. Here you go.
The lawyer groaned loudly. I was pretty sure he'd been stabbed. The girls began to scream. Sherman was moaning in excruciating pain. Chaos had taken over inside the cabin.
Chakadao!
Harris suddenly yelled in Vietnamese. He sounded a little nuts. Chokadao means kill, Sampson told me. Sampson and I were up in a flash and sprinting full out toward the cabin. We reached the front door together. He went in first with his gun drawn. Police! He yelled over the blaring rock music and TV. Police! Hands in the air! Now! I was right behind Sampson when Starkey opened up with an MP5. At the same time, Griffin fired a handgun from across the room. The two Asian women were screaming as they scampered out the cabin's rear door. They had enough street smarts to get out of there fast. I saw that the smaller woman had a deep gash across her cheek. Her face was dripping blood. Mark Sherman lay on the floor, motionless. There were dark splatters of blood on the wall behind the lawyer's body. He was dead. The big gun erupted again, noise and smoke filling the room. My ears were ringing.
Move out,
Sharkey yelled to the others.
D Mao!
Brownlee Harris shouted and actually seemed to be laughing. Was he completely mad? Were they all insane? The three killers bolted out the back door. Warren Griffin covered the retreat with heavy fire. They didn't want a final shootout inside the cabin. Starkey had other plans for his team. Sampson and I fired at the retreating men, but they made it out. We approached the back door slowly. Nobody was waiting there, and no more shots were fired at us for the moment. Suddenly there was the sound of shooting away from the cabin. Half a dozen